Hi all, Rick here, and the recent series of Doctor Who dropped a hint that Time Lord Society may in fact have more going on than even the Doctor is aware of. No spoilers here for Series 12, but I thought I'd take a look at early Gallifreyan history as loosely established in the old canon. So one fact about the Time Lords that is common knowledge is their homeworld of Gallifrey. But since the series' revival, we've never gotten hard answers as to how Time Lord Society formed, just a few hints to ancient lore. Much like the classic series, to be honest, but let's try to piece together their history of Gallifrey before the Time Lords existed as best we can. Another thing to bear in mind is that a lot of this lore predates the revival of the series in 2005 and takes place before the Time War shook things up, so it may not be the current status quo. Time Lords as a species are old. Very old. So let's go back to the very beginning of the universe and work from there. But even before the Big Bang and the formation of the N-Space, the designation for normal space-time, there was another universe, the Dvapara Yuga. In this pre-universe lived a myriad of beings, some of which still existed into its replacement, the current. Such claimed inhabitants included the Beast and his son Abaddon, which were sealed on Krop Tor by the Disciples of Light before the formation of time, space or matter, before N-Space in other words. The Siriath Du was from this time, as well as the Guardians of Time, the Elder Gods and the Toymakers. The Solitract was a conscious energy field that kept the N-Space universe from being formed and was eventually removed and contained within a separate plane. Once there, creation could begin anew. In the same fashion, the Dark was void energy that was sentient and had existed before the universe too. Other beings, not strong enough to survive the coming Big Bang, became beings of faith, myth and folded themselves into the fabric of the new universe's inhabitants, the stories, as gods. As that universe ended, it was also the beginning. Event 1, the first fixed point, known to the Beast as the Cataclysm, and humanity as the Big Bang. In these times, the survivors of Event 1 adopted their new roles as guardians, myths, prisoners, or exiles. For several billions of years, galaxies formed, stars, planets, but as there was no one alive yet to witness it, except for time travellers, it was all very dull, so let's skip all that. The first race to evolve into sentience wiped itself out in biological warfare. Others soon evolved to follow, and species such as the Carrionites, the Rachnos and the Nestine evolved. On Gallifrey, a race of people were evolving into humanoid form, known as the Shadow People in their native tongue, and they were the earliest Gallifreyans. As this was in a time before the morphogenic field was created, an ambient field that increased the likelihood of the humanoid form naturally evolving, many of these species around this time were weird and wonderful. In this era, called the Dark Times, the forces of magic were still prevalent, as the unpredictable and loose nature of the fabric of reality gave itself easily to manipulation. Gallifrey evolved as a matriarchal society under the rule of the Pythians. The Pythia had a strong psychic power, such as precognition, and they used their abilities to rule over the lower classes and cement their place among other fledgling empires. They engaged in the use of ritualistic magics to weave powerful spells, while their less magically inclined followers turned to science to bolster their abilities. For eons, the Gallifreyan Empire expanded and conquered worlds, established colonies and diplomatic ties with worlds that it could not seize. This was a very violent time for these people, and they did not resemble the Time Lords in any true sense. During this era, they clashed with their oldest enemy. Not Daleks, the Great Vampires, called the Iskarroth. During this war, where the giant energy-devouring beasts were felled with bow ships, characters like Omega, Rassilon and the Other established themselves as Gallifreyan heroes. Soon Rassilon's neo-technologist movement, a political and military following of science-minded Gallifreyans, rose to challenge the rule of Pythia, and overthrew the Sisterhood, driving them from Gallifrey. they fled to one of their colony worlds, Karn, where the remnants of the Pythian society became the Sisterhood of Karn, which explains their continual ties to Gallifrey in the Time War and beyond, as they're basically the exiled ruling class that became its own culture with time. Sort of cousins to the Time Lords. Rassilon began to reshape the Gallifreyan society to include the Great Houses. He introduced regeneration, established the Academy, and basically made Time Lords as we know them. Following Omega's experiments, the Gallifreyan society established themselves as the Lords of Time, and chose to bring order to the chaotic nature of the universe. Now this gets a little meta here, as up until the Dark Age of Gallifrey, the universal laws were similar but not quite the same as they are now. They are consistently described as chaotic, which is not to say that time, for example, didn't exist as a concept, but it was just different. A hard thing to process, I just have to sort of accept it and move on. The universal rules were sort of in a beta stage, the pre-release build of reality, if you like. So this is when the Time Lords chose to instigate their spiral politic. This began with the founding of the Protocols of Linearity, a set of literal and metaphysical laws that regulated time travel. Some of these threads were quite literally new laws of physics, or maybe refinements to existing ones, effectively weaving a web of time across the fabric of the universe to make it consistent and bring it under the Time Lords' control. It's not like the anchoring of time, as it was known, was done immediately. This process probably took eons and many calculations, but was established by finding numerous anchor points, and these are eras and events that cannot be changed, or time becomes unwound. Fixed points. Huge changes to time can be wrought around these key events and actions, but certain very specific things must always happen or risk the universal structure of space-time unravelling. We saw this happen at Lake Silencio when River Song failed to kill the Doctor and all of time began to overlap. This may be closer to sort of how the universe originally operated before the Web of Time. During the implementation of these laws, Rassilon eradicated several species from history, while Gallifrey was removed from the full effects of the Web of Time, making it a point from which the Time Lords could survey over all to maintain it. One big side effect was that magic was all but eradicated, including much of the Pythian power. The refined and reinforced laws of the universe were now far more rigid, and only magic that closely followed the new status quo could even stand a chance of continuing. Some examples include many forms of psychic powers, as it has rules and biology behind it, as well as the Carrionites' use of word-based mathematics. So aside from a few exceptions, magic was now dead, and the universe as we know it was truly established, with the Time Lords assuming the mantle of protecting time. Now it was brought to order. Much like our own Dark Ages, the Gallifreyan Dark Times were called such because records from this time are incomplete. This can be attributed to several things: the numerous wars Gallifrey was involved with, the reshaping of how time functions, so events may literally have been rewritten, and the fact that Rassilon got to decide what to record and what not. As the very nature of the universe was brought into order for the purposes of stable time travel, the Dark Ages may never be able to be revisited, as they too would have been restructured to adhere to the Web of Time. So honestly, this makes the most accurate recollection of these times in the shared tales of the Sisterhood of Karn, unless there's another source out there that could be stumbled upon. Like I said before though, much of this may be rewritten with extensive time travel, the Time War and so on. It could also be an entire fabrication from the scrolls of Rassilon, who selectively rewrote history to his advantage. Were they really instrumental in the taming of the universe? Maybe over the course of this new series we'll get answers as to what exactly happened in those dark times near the beginning of everything, and what roles the Time Lords played in the harnessing of time travel. Maybe if any at all. Thanks for watching this video on a very confusing and vague topic, but that's also why I kind of like it. All this mystery around the abstract concepts such as different laws of the universe and that the actual rule-breaking magic was a thing. I love it all and hate how naff at explaining it I can be, even to myself. So I hope some of this made sense, and if it didn't, then I think that's the point. I don't know anymore. Doctor Who content has been a bit light on my channel for a while, but honestly the last series kind of bored me and then it went on hiatus. But this new one has me hooked, so I'm looking forwards to it. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.